Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. No Jesse Pierce this week, so it's Judd and AJ, as always. And plenty to discuss here, despite the fact the Wild's been done for a long time. Stanley Cup Finals in full swing as we record this. The Edmonton Oilers trail the Florida Panthers 2-0 in their final series. The NHL Draft is a couple of weeks out, and we will get to that. But what I have for you is I have a pack of questions, AJ Fredrickson, that I want to run past you that we can go back and forth with. I have a draft question that I actually solely want your answer to because you are much more up to date on the draft stuff as far as prospects go than I am. But earlier today, X caught fire, the old Twitter, because we had what appeared to be a legitimate leak that started with a web or a account called Icethetics. Okay. Icethetics, 31.3 thousand followers. It says here in the description on X, Seattle-based lover of hockey logos and uniforms, established 2007. And then there's a tweet address for it. They tweeted something out, and it was picked up by Bleacher Report Open Ice, which is a very credible site with 121,000 followers. And it says the following. The Minnesota Wild will be switching to the North Stars colors in the 2025-26 season as part of a rebrand. Now, I'll say that again. They'll be switching to the North Stars colors, which of course they have worn as an alternate now for a few years, an alternate jersey age, in the 2025-26 season. First of all, what was your reaction to the news that looked legitimate and then was dispelled by, among others, our own Jesse Pierce and also Michael Russo of The Athletic? And then what was your reaction when you saw that those two said, nothing to see here, we've checked, there is no rebrand planned?
What a entertaining 15, 20 minutes on good old X, good old Twitter.
Awesome.
It seems like this color scheme, Judd, it's only two sides of the fence. There is no middle ground. You either love it and you adore it and you want it and you crave it, or nope, that's Dallas's technical heritage, that the Wild cannot do that. Stop trying to live in the past. We have to move forward. Close the yearbook. I'm a fan of it. I like the look overall is slick. I love the green more, like forest green.
Yes, I know.
I feel like you can only love so much, but that kind of brighter, that North Stars green paired with that golden yellow, oh God, it's just
it pops.
It pops. It catches attention. And for a team that I think has faded to the background in a lot of NHL discussion for, frankly, its entire life in the NHL, this at least puts them in the forward-facing, hey, at least they look good. Maybe not play-wise sometimes, but aesthetically, they're wearing a fun uniform. I put out something that if they were to make the change, I think, unfortunately, as much as I love the current logo because it's kind of like it's a lot coming together. It's a lot of like intricacies that form a giant bear head or whatever. And I like it, but I think you'd have to rebrand slightly and get a new logo because I don't think you can work with that same color scheme for the current logo. So I personally would have been fine all for the switch, but I'm not necessarily, my day isn't ruined now that it seems like nothing is in the works. No, don't look at the man behind the curtain. We are going to move on. Nothing to see here.
So I guess I disagree a little bit because first of all, and I have said this for years, I don't like the name. Like, to me, it was a bad name from a plethora of bad choices. I don't know how we got the list down to like 5, but most of them, like Voyagers,
the Blizzard, I think.
Yeah, Blizzard. They sucked. So like the Wild, I don't like the name. I, however, do not mind, and if you are consuming this show on our YouTube channel right now, I don't mind the logo on the North Star look. So I get your point. I don't see it as a sticking point. Here's my thing, though. You were born after the North Stars went to Dallas. So you're not saying this because you're a North Stars fan. Like with me, I'm just accused of being, and I look, their jerseys were great, I thought. Yeah. But anyway, you're not being accused of this because you've got some like long-standing love of the North Stars. You're saying this why I am. I just like the color pattern more. Forest green to me is boring. They tried that red. A lot of people hated that red, that forest, the forest green and red. I don't think, other than the home whites that they used to wear before we switched that up and went white on the road, the white jersey on the logo I actually do sort of like, but I've never thought that because to me, forest green is boring. I've never thought that their jerseys that have color pop and are exciting. So that's the first thing. So I saw this and I was excited. Here's where I'm not so sure that I buy the nothing to see here. Go away, everybody. Nothing to see. No rebrand. Russo came back and said that for their 20th season, they are planning, or 25th, they are planning to celebrate their history. And keep in mind, what I read was this was not a rebrand that was going to go into effect immediately. It was for the 25-26 season. Given that there have been some credible outlets, or at least not fly by night, like it's not Joe in his mom's basement, who tweeted this out, I'm not so sure that the Wild didn't get had, and that they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle now. Because there would be no reason to announce a rebrand for a year from now on a arbitrary Wednesday, June afternoon. In other words, I'm not totally buying, I'm buying the reporting because our friends do good work and they call the team, and that's all you can do. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm buying that they're not doing something and that they just conveniently will hope people have forgotten about today in 6 months. Whatever it is. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'm fully in that camp. I have a friend who you would have thought I took away every member of his family when I said, "Hey, it looks like they're going to be changing it." He hates the color scheme. He was moaning, he was crying about it, and then it's like, yeah, no, they're not a reputable source. What are you talking about? I've seen enough from Aesthetics in the past.
That's what I was going to ask you.
They've broken stuff. I don't follow them adamantly.
And they wouldn't troll.
No, from my knowledge, they have a decent enough of a reputation to where if they reported that, I'm going to take their word for it. It's not just, they're not throwing out stuff, and that's a weird thing to just lie about. I feel like they were fed something that was based on something that has a little bit of a foundation. And to your point, there's nothing worse than having a sort of, think about when you watch the draft, whether it be the NHL, whether it be the NBA or the NFL, how many people are like, Adam Schefter, stop tweeting the picks before it's announced on TV. Nobody likes that stuff to be ruined. So if you're the Minnesota Wild, why would you not want to announce this yourself? Have that expectation and that excitement for yourself based on your own release rather than a Seattle-based guy that loves jerseys and hockey heritage to announce it. And all of a sudden it's
on June 12th of 2024 when it's going to be a year from now. That's my thing. And look, if they're going to rebrand or if they're going to tweak or if they're going to make an alteration, I don't care what you call it, they are not going to now trot out the 2023-24 alternates. They're going to rebrand again. This whole thing, the Vikings whiteout, the Twins now, right? The City Connect, which I think every team but the Yankees has done in baseball, or this. They are constantly changed to get you, the consumer, to buy more. So, you're never going to be like, remember those jerseys we wore that you all bought a couple years ago? Bring them back out. They rebranded the North Star look, I think at least twice, if not 3 times.
Yeah, so they called it 2 or 3 different things.
Yeah, the 78s, because that was 1978. Before that, it was the 80s.
Reverse retro. Yeah.
Exactly. Reverse. Right. So, when Aesthetics tweets this out and then tweets a Foligno, wearing the 78s, that's not what they're going to rebrand to. They're going to rebrand to something, again, totally new. So I'm not buying something is not brewing here that's going to cost you folks $300.
One thing to keep an eye on, ladies and gentlemen, how early in the season are we going to see that sale ticket added to some of these jerseys that you see in the Hockey Lodge and around fanatics.com? how quickly are they going to be trying to move as many of these current Wild jerseys as possible? Because was it you with the Polanco where it's like, why would Jorge Polanco's jersey be discounted at Twins
Fest? There was a bunch of Polanco stuff. Yeah.
He's still on the roster. That's so weird. Why would they, a week later, get him out of here? The other thing would be taking a page out of my guy, Lou Lamoriello, the triple L, the Lou Lamoriello leak. We're just going to test the waters. What's everybody's reaction? Does everybody love it? Does everybody hate it before we make a final decision? Because he's, I know, known to sort of do that with potential trades in the past. Are the Wild doing that with a potential rebrand? Does everybody love this idea? It seems like it was split down the middle, so I don't think they got too much of an answer. But keep an eye on those sales racks this upcoming season.
That's a great point. But yeah, and we don't know. So like if they go with the North Stars colors again, we don't know what they're going to look like. Like we'll know what the color scheme is, but we're not going to know. I mean, they could, for all, just spitballing here completely, no knowledge at all. They could unveil some type of jersey scheme, because you're always going to have three now, basically, right? Like there's always a third one in the hopper. But anyway, they could take your point and say, you know what? The head doesn't work real well here. They could go to a W. They could go to, an upside down N that looks like a W. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it just feels like, this doesn't feel like an accidental, gotcha, we hacked you leak. This feels like you said, either a dry run or it just got out too early. And, the aesthetics thing is a great point. 31,000 followers. So good amount, not a ton, but a good amount. And they're not after submarining their own reputation. And it's interesting that Bleacher Report Open Ice, which I believe is owned by the same folks that run Turner, if I'm not mistaken, it's interesting that they picked it up. So I don't know. It feels like there's more here. And I find it, if they had said for this season, I'd say, no way. They're not doing it for this season. But this feels like there's something brewing, my friend.
Was it the Bruins that they had their 100th anniversary this season? They had the 100th anniversary where they rebranded, in a sense, like they changed the jerseys, and the gold went from like the classic Bruin yellow to it was a legit gold. And frankly, I didn't like as much.
I like their old jerseys way more.
Absolutely. But that was like the permanent mainstay home jersey for the entire season.
Yes,
maybe that is something, and that's to your point of Russo had mentioned previously, like for the 25th season, they're doing something. Yeah. Maybe that's what this is, and maybe it got lost in translation of they're rebranding for just the season. They're changing it for just the 1 year. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I think there's going to be more to this, though, down the road.
Yeah, and Mike's note, so Mike, it looks like he called the team, got a comment about there's no change. There's no plan to rebrand. And then the second part said they will celebrate their 25-year history. And then he says the key word is there. But the problem is there's no great Wild jersey. There's no great things to celebrate. They have one playoff run. What are you going to bring back Wes and Darby and throw them on the ice? Like that's the thing is it is really, and I love the sport. I've always said this. And I mean, I go to a ton of the games. I'm really glad that the league has been back for a long time now, but the reality is this team's history sort of just stinks. Like there's just there's nothing to it really. So I don't know how much of, and if you bring back the Reds that they wore at home for a few years, people are going to go crazy because people hated those things. So it's interesting. 2 weeks from the draft, which is when we're recording this, Wild 13th pick overall in the first round. You are our draft prospect expert. What is your prediction? And we can certainly come back to this next week. So you're not held. This is not binding. But what is your current prediction about what you think the Wild will do with that pick? Will they trade up? Will they trade back? Or will they use that pick? And if they will use that pick, who do you think right now would probably be there at 13?
So let's run through a couple different scenarios here. One, I think more often than not, if you run this through a bunch of times, they probably stay put at 13. I think that, unfortunately, they're kind of on the fringe where they're at the mercy of everything else falling out, and the chips will fall where they may, and they're going to have probably one or two guys, and they have to decide if they want to go forward or defense. And I was on team defense for a long time, but then our conversation with Bill Guerin led me to believe, you know what, he might be thinking offense. he might be thinking a bigger frame. He might be thinking a talented winger. And that's where a couple guys, I think, come into play. He's been dropping for me and a lot of other scouts and just kind of draft people. Cole Yzerman went from as high as 2 or 3, like at the beginning of last season, to now he might be lucky to get into the top 10. He might even get as low as like 16th. Cole Yzerman, elite shot. There's nothing debatable about that. He scores goals. The problem is the rest of his game is it leaves a lot to be desired. Can you coach that? Can you teach that? I think so. But at a certain point, you're going to get to him in like a spot in the draft where you're like, okay, why is he still on the board? I think at 13, you can say that and you can take him and feel confident about it. Even after what they did last year, and there's still a lot to be desired and it's probably still a lot to see. I'm not going to write off Charlie Stramel quite yet because should he have gone that high? That's debatable. The question is will he turn into? I'm going to give it a couple more years, and I think back-to-back drafts they might be able to rationalize taking, maybe another a work in progress type guy at where they are. Which 13, Cole Yzerman, he has the scoring, and I think that's what you.
I was going to say you can't teach scoring.
You can't. You can teach getting into the play. You can teach want to get back on defense. You saw it this past season. Matt Boldy, he was unengaged at times, and all of a sudden it seemed like it clicked at a certain point. They taught that. Cole Yzerman scores goals, and when a guy has that scoring knack, that scoring ability, I really think that if he's there at 13, that is the guy, unless there is one of these higher-end defending prospects that just for some reason gets left on the board. Another one that I think if Cole Yzerman does go a pick or two before them and they stand pat at 13, this is a guy that a couple months ago he was in like the mid-20s, early 20s. He's been rising a lot, and I had him as like a fringe honorable mention guy when we last talked about this. Beckett Seneca. He's with the Oshawa Generals. He is a 6'2" right winger. The knock on him is that he will play a little too much hero puck. He loves to do the one-on-one. He kind of ignores his teammates at times. But the thing is, I can overlook that in a sense because of you're playing junior hockey. The rest of your team might not be the best. You see it in basketball. When Kobe doesn't pass to his teammates, when Caitlin Clark right now doesn't pass to her teammates, people are like, okay, she's the one that should be taking the shots. Right. So when Beckett Seneca's on the ice, I'm fine with him probably hold on to the puck because when he does make it work, it is a highlight reel, and he's able to play a physical game. With his growth, he's also seen like little to no drop off with being able to stick handle the puck at a high pace. So he skates well. He receives the puck well, but it's his puck handling and stick handling that kind of set him apart. So Corey Pronman of The Athletic projects him as a top 6 scoring winger on any NHL roster. That's good enough for me at 13 to be the pick for the Minnesota Wild.
Okay, so if he's there and Yzerman's there, who do you take?
I go Yzerman. I think it's a different tier of scoring. It's probably a little bit more work for the rest of the game, but the scoring is just so elite when it comes to Cole Yzerman. Yeah. I've mentioned this to you on past shows, but people are saying he's like the best, let alone like standalone goal scorer since Austin Matthews draft. So he is a goal scorer, and that's a guy that the Minnesota Wild I think have been needing to add as a complement to Kirill Kaprizov.
Interesting. I have seen that. It sounds like when we did your prospects, draft prospects 1.0, I think way back in December or so in the winter, your guy, Iginla, Tej Iginla?
Yes.
Has rocketed up. Now, it sounds like he's going top 10. There's some speculation that Calgary might actually try to trade up to get him. So I don't think he's going to be around at 13 now, and clearly back then there was a chance.
And well, that's a perfect segue to your next question here, because you said, will they make a trade? What's the other situation where they maybe want to move up again? And I think there is 2 guys that I think fit into probably what Bill Guerin wants to do. One of those is Iginla. He is a guy that has crept up all the way. I think he's going to go top 10. If he doesn't, any team that takes him 11, 12, or Wild at 13, that is going to be a steal because
someone's going to go up and get him.
Somebody has to.
If he starts to fall, someone will go up and get him.
And that's where I know who are you going to trade?
Yeah. Well, and the question is, will Philip Gustafson be with the Wild after the draft?
If they want to move up, I think there's enough teams there that need a goaltender that you can say, let's swap first-round picks. I'll throw you a goalie, maybe, and even need something else. Like you have a couple third-round picks, I want to say next year or in the following year. Yeah. We can part with those. Just a little bit of a sweetener to make something happen to where you're going to fall a couple spots. You still get a good guy, but we get our guy. And I think either a Ginla or a Berkeley Catton is probably that guy. But when you look at the teams that are above them in the draft, the Devils, they need a goalie. The Senators, way high in the draft, like that would be a huge jump to go up.
Yeah,
but they desperately need a goalie. The Sabres, you could argue, need a goalie, and they're kind of around that. I think they're the 10th pick, if my memory serves me correct. No, they're the 11th pick, so there's 2 spots up for the Wild, and then you could argue even maybe the Flames. I think they're going to be tempted too much by Ginla being there at 9 for them,
right?
Given Jerome played for them,
but they might trade Markstrom, who's got a no move. But it sounds like Markstrom and the team had some. How can I put this? A falling out a bit because they were definitely trying to trade him to the Devils at one point. And I think they could, and I think he would have accepted the trade, but then they couldn't settle on the terms. And so Markstrom, I'm not sure he's back there, but I think you're right. I think if the Flames have a chance to grab Jerome McGinley's son, I think they're going to jump at it. I think it's too hard not to take it.
And so that's why the other gentleman I said, Berkeley Catton. Berkeley Catton, I think is, for some reason, people aren't as high as him as I maybe am. I had him as potentially like a top 6 draft pick. When it comes to and I'm trying to find the stat here because I had it stashed away exactly for this conversation when it comes to Berkeley Catton. But when it comes to CHL draft eligible skaters to produce 50-plus goals and 115-plus points in the 21st century, the list goes as followed. Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, Connor Bedard, Berkeley Catton.
Wow.
That's it. For some reason, he is projected like in the 8 to maybe 11, 12. If it's a spot or two, and all it takes is to get, move that spot with either a Gustafson or bump, similar to what they did with the Wallstead trade, excuse me, a couple years ago, where you throw in a third, you throw in something else just to move up and sweeten it.
Yep.
I don't see why you don't. He is talented. He's only 5'10", so that takes away from like the size factor that I think a lot of people want to see the Wild shift to. But when it comes to high-end skill, similar to what we just talked about with Yzerman, this kid's got it. And that list, I think, speaks for itself. He's among elite company when it comes to junior hockey, and it's supposed to translate just as well into the pro game.
Interesting. And so for those who are curious about the Wild's draft, the draft, by the way, on the 28th and 29th, so it starts on a Friday. And then the majority of it is the next day on a Saturday. The Wild's first pick, as we just talked about, first round pick is 13th overall. They've got a second round pick at 45. They traded away their third round pick in the Marcus Johansson trade. Now, Marcus is great in the World Championship, so I don't know why anyone would complain about that. They do have a pick in the 4th round. They have 2 picks in the 5th round, including one they got from the Sabres in the Jordan Greenway trade. They have a pick in the 6th round. They traded away their 7th round pick in the Patrick Maroon trade last year to Tampa Bay. So in all, the Wild has 6 draft picks. So there is, of course, a chance that they could package picks. So on the Gustafson front, do you think he is with this team after the draft, or do you think they move him?
If he is, I don't think it's for very long. And maybe this is just me digging my heels in on a Fleury-Wallstead tandem next year, but I just don't see a reason why you would keep him around if you want to develop a guy like Wallstead. I know Jesse has been an advocate of sending him down to the minors for another year. That's going to help him develop. That's going to get him action and everything like that. But similar to what we saw with Marco Rossi, who I know there's a conversation possibly there at some point for surprise.
We'll get to that question.
But I don't think he has anything more to prove there. Sure, has he been a world beater in the AHL? No. He's been good, and I think good enough to probably get a look at the with the big club in the NHL.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to have a situation where he's going to get, you could say about split time with one of the best goalies in NHL history as his tandem partner. There has never been a better situation. If it was the other way around and it was like, some Joe Schmo and the other guy is Philip Gustafsson and say, you know what, maybe let's be patient with him. But this is Marc-Andre Fleury, who can have him under his wing for an entire 82-game year. Yeah. Get him up there, get him in the locker room, because even if it's bad at first, Fleury's going to coach him through it. Fleury's going to pass along his Hall of Fame wisdom on the kid. There's no better situation than to make it a Fleury-Wallstead tandem.
Couldn't agree more. It's going to be Flowers' last season. It's absolutely perfect. That's what I think is the most important question, unless you think that Wallstead is not close to being prepared, which is not what they think. But, it'd be one thing if you thought, well, yeah, Fleury can help him, but oh my God, is he going to be overmatched in this league? I don't think that's going to be the problem. So I would far prefer to have it so that Wallstead is here working with the coaching staff here, working with Fleury here. Like every advantage in what you're going to learn from other people is here. It's not in Iowa. So I'm with you. I think Gustafsson gets traded, if not at the draft, in July at some point in time. No matter what the Wild has said about it, I think it's fully their plan. And are they going to get this unbelievable return back for him? No. Are there teams, to your point, that are desperate for goaltending and will give you something back? Absolutely. And I mean, Gustafsson's not the hot name on the market, but you know what? He's a solid guy to have. So I think he's gone, and I agree completely. I think the Wallstead-Fleury tandem with Flower being a pseudo coach in his last year where he's going to want to help absolutely makes a ton of sense, which leads me to my next question. At the draft, do you expect, and if so, who would you think might be a surprise trade chip? So not a target necessarily, but a current rostered guy who you could see being traded, but you would be like, didn't necessarily project that coming until Judd asked me that great question on June the 12th.
I mean, is this a huge surprise? Maybe not for some with the conversation and kind of like the inklings we've seen over the past handful of months surrounding him. But if they are sitting there at 13 and the options to trade up and get a dynamic, bigger framed physical centerpiece is there, and like you're upgrading. Marco Rossi at the end of, I want to say this next year, he will be an RFA. He had a breakout year, so you're kind of capitalizing when the stock is on the upswing. If I pull it up here, he had 40 points last year, 21 goals, 19 assists. It seems like if that's the time you want to pull the trigger on a Marco Rossi deal, it's about now, because if it goes south, you're going to be kicking yourself, and if you're not completely sold in that front office,
you changed your tune.
I still don't think so. Personally, I would love to see him stay here. But I'm looking at what Bill Guerin and maybe this front office wants to do, which is if they want to get bigger, unfortunately, they might not think Marco Rossi is their guy. I'm going to be in his corner no matter what, because I think if he goes anywhere, he's going to blossom and turn into a dynamic player that any team is going to wish they had. It's just so frustrating because it's almost been too quiet recently. You know what I mean? It's like we had the similar to the news today. Are they going to rebrand? Are they not? Are they changing the color scheme? That's going to go away for a little bit. And maybe all of a sudden, hey, guess what? The Wild announced that they're going to change. We haven't heard a lot of Marco Rossi discussion recently, which leads me to believe maybe behind the scenes there's a conversation where Bill Guerin said, hey, how do you value him? What do you think? Because
sure,
a 26-year-old goalie that was up and down this past season in Gustafsson might be attractive to some teams, but I think a 22-year-old, 21-year-old center in Marco Rossi.
It's not even close as far as
that's a much more attractive. Like and the frustrating part there is how many times have we talked over the past couple years of a center is just so, once you have them, it's hard to get rid of them because they're so low stock across the league for like higher end, a top 6 center. Marco Rossi, I think, is a top 6 center for you. And now you're just willing to part ways on who knows what's going to happen. How many times have we seen somebody trade up at a draft, and even in the Wild's sake, where you take somebody and they just don't work out. They just don't pan out.
Yeah.
That would be my surprise, just because I still don't think it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I think those rumors have been floated out solely to maybe get the phone ring and see if somebody wants to overpay and really wow them. But that would be a surprise to me if I see the Wild. The Wild are now on the clock, and they've traded Marco Rossi and the 13th pick for the 8th overall pick or something along those lines.
Interesting. So here's mine. We've talked about this around the periphery more, and it's not a name that's floated, and I firmly believe it's not a guy that they're actively trying to trade. And I find this, but before I get to the name, by the way, I find this information from our friends at Cap Friendly, who have been bought out by the Washington Capitals and are going to shut down one of the greatest sites because the league evidently wanted the site shut down because they don't like all of this information being accessible to the fans and the media, because the league, while they have a great sport, continues to shoot itself in the foot. And somebody else will just come along and replace them. But
I got you. Puckpedia.
Puckpedia, yeah. So
go.
Cap Friendly, I believe, is about a month left before the Capitals take it in-house, and then they've got a bunch of things they're going to do. I don't know, but just, you've done a great job. It's a shame. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Capitals. But here's the name I got. It's a guy going into the last year of his contract with a cap hit, very reasonable, of $2.45 million. But he's a guy who is going to get an extension that's going to be very rich. And I think the Wild could leverage this one into a big return. Jake Middleton. Jake Middleton. Now you might say, why? You need defenseman. Why, Sports Dad, would you trade Jake Middleton? Well, I remind you, he's going into the last year of his contract. He's going to get paid. I don't know, he's not going to get overpaid. Right now, he's underpaid. But if I trade him to a team that's on the precipice, as I like to say, of what it feels can be a run in next season, which I don't believe that the Wild is, I think I could get a haul in return. He's a big enough defenseman. He plays a style that you absolutely are looking for. Is he flashy? No. Is he effective? Yes. Could he be a marvelous second pairing guy on a really good team? Absolutely. Do I want to trade him? No. But I do think that there's something to be said if I can leverage him, because I think he's going to get paid. He's going to get a multi-year contract, and I think he's going to get paid. And I don't know that I want to pay him a ton. I don't know about that. So that's just one. And as far as I can see, he has no trade protection. So there's no move clause. There's nothing stopping me from trading him. So Age, I am going to submit the surprise trade if it gets you the right return, because you're not looking into trade. It's like what your point is on Rossi. You're not looking to trade him. But if somebody comes and says, hey, here's the farm, I don't think you're going to say absolutely not. Jake Middleton's mine.
Middleton right now is that, you get your garage sale set up and a lot of stuff's bolted down. You only have so much that you can actually sell, but somebody's walking by and is like, you know what? That table you're sitting at, that's a nice table. I could use that table at my house. That's a great, well-built table. I'll put that in my I'll put that.
Because I got a nicer house than you.
Yeah, exactly. My house is nicer. I need that. You clearly don't need that. You're out here. You're out in your garage. What are we doing? How much for the table? Actually, it's not for sale. I'll give you $70. You know what? The table's for sale. Here you go. You want help loading it up? Absolutely. Could we see a hey, Jake, we got this offer for you. Do you want to negotiate with the team? Because isn't that what Mark Stone did when he went from the Senators to the Golden Knights, where it was a sign and trade, where they kind of had that dialogue before of, hey, you're on the Golden Knights, and 5 minutes later, by the way, we've extended him for however many years.
Right. But Stone had trade protection, right?
That's true. So you don't even need to worry about
No, you could just trade him.
Yeah.
And he's going into
his
the last year, so that gives you runway to negotiate. He's going to be 29 in January. I'm just saying he falls into a very interesting camp. Do I want to overpay a guy who's going to turn 30 and who's a solid player. But I mean, he's not an all-star. He's just a very solid guy. But he would be a marvelous middle pair defenseman on a cup contender, which I don't consider the 24-25 Wild, jersey rebrand or not, to be. So that's my point, is like, I think somebody could offer you enough where you're like, oh, okay, I can't turn that down.
Yeah, I mean, we also saw Declan Chisholm, after getting picked up off waivers, he was a healthy scratch at times early in that tenure. But when you look at who they have waiting in the wings for just minor league
blue liners.
Yeah, I mean, Carson Lambos, I think he's still going to turn out really well. Ryan O'Rourke maybe hasn't been developing as much as some people have wanted, but I think he's going to be a guy that you can probably slot in there as a bottom pairing or a middle tier defender. Damon Hunt at times, if my memory serves me right, hasn't he got there's been talk about him getting the call up, or am I just spacing out there?
I think you're right.
And even Jack Peart, St. Cloud State guy.
Yeah, they've got guys.
HCHC winner. They just signed that entry level deal. I want to say after the offseason. So possibly, are they planning for something? They've got guys in the wings. So this isn't going to leave you like.
And they love Jake. They love Jake. But I'm just saying, if a GM comes up, if the Bruins, perennial contenders, are like, okay, we'll give you a really good package for this guy, and he's a year away. And look, I know that you're going to have cap space freed up here eventually. But again, do you want to write a big multi-year contract check to a defenseman who's going to turn 30 then almost instantly once his contract is done, because it'll be January? So just a thought there. All right, final question. Are you more excited for the Four Nations face-off, which we now know will be played in Montreal, with games between Canada and Sweden on February 12th, the U.S. and Finland on the 13th, and then a double header, Finland and Sweden, and the U.S. versus Canada on February 15th, and then it moves to Boston for the championship round, or by the fact that the salary cap has now been increased to $88 million for the 24-25 season. The $4.5 million bump, so it was $83.5 million last season, is a 5.4% increase, the largest the league has seen since the 2018-19 campaign. Are you more excited for an all-star tournament that's actually going to be all-stars and not a bunch of BS, or for a salary cap increase, because this league has not had one in forever?
I'm going to say the $4.5 million added to the salary cap, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
The Wild have been in a salary cap predicament here for a while now. So any money that they can get as a relief to kind of build something, add a player, or even two if you want to split that up, is welcome with open arms. Mm-hmm. But that's a step in the direction for the league. That opens up so much more, and possibly that means more is coming along the way. The only reason why I'm also going to take that is because there's 4 teams in this, what is it called? The Nations Face-Off tournament.
Yeah.
We just saw
Four Nations Face-Off tournament.
We just saw Czechia, led by David Pastrnak, win, what was it, the IIHF, whatever.
World Championships.
World Championships.
The World Championships. Yeah.
I feel like you're missing some pretty notable names here by limiting just to
the Russians are out because they're at war.
Yep.
And they might not be in I don't think they're going to be in the Olympic Games, which sort of disqualifies Olympic hockey as being great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way too many good players. This is not a political take. This is you're disqualifying too many good players take.
But then also, I mean, you're like Pastrnak, you're missing a lot of those other nations that, are they going to be favorites? Probably not. But when you just saw that they can beat good teams, and they have a couple pretty notable guys on those rosters. So to just limit it to 4 molds the excitement for me a little bit. I'm going to be watching every single second of every single game still. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be fantastic hockey. It's going to be entertaining. But when it comes to whether or not I'd rather have an extra $4.5 million added to the cap around the league, give me the cap space every single time.
You know what? I'm with you completely, because this has been such BS of late. This has been such BS. Well, we had the pandemic and we had to get the players, then had to, cut, and we had to pay off the debt and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, you're signing these TV contracts. Loosen up the purse strings, Gary. Let's get the money out there. You're expanding every other week because teams are paying ridiculous sums. I'm with you completely. I mean, even with the Wild still in a cap predicament, this is great news, and it's going to get, hopefully it continues to rise now. And the international hockey, you bring up a really good point. First of all, this cup leaves out like Draisaitl, who's German.
Yeah.
Like there's no place for him. And they didn't create another offshoot team. So like all those guys now I would argue if I was a Wild GM, if I was Bill Guerin, I love this because Kaprizov can't play. And I'm like, hey, Kirill, sorry, just go in your apartment and chill for a few weeks. But as a hockey fan, and the Olympics are going to be, I mean, I'm guessing that the Russians still will not be allowed in the Olympics at that point. So that's going to be severely compromised because that team being gone is a huge deal. So yeah, I'm with you. And I think there's a perception that I hate international hockey. I don't. I actually like it, but I also prefer to see the actual league thriving more. Like whatever benefits the regular season and the playoffs in the National Hockey League is, to me, the most important thing. And so I think the increase of the cap and just the increase of the business and like acknowledging now that, whatever had to be paid down is paid down is great news. So I'm with you on this one. Go salary cap. All right, sir, we are done. Next time, just quickly, next time we record, will the Florida Panthers have dispatched with the Oilers, or do you expect an Oiler comeback in Edmonton now that the Panthers won the first two games in Florida?
Will we see the Oilers be able to do what the Bruins did to the Canucks back in 2018? I don't think so. I think
no riots.
No riots.
No riots this time.
No burning anything down.
Don't tip over cars.
As much as I would love to see them fight back, the Panthers are just way too complete of a team, I think. Yes. Connor McDavid can only do so much. And you could see, like, the frustration is already boiling over, it seems like, for Evander Kane and some of these other guys. Like, who was it? Evan Bouchard was put in a stranglehold. He was tapping out.
Well, and Barkov and Draisaitl, I don't believe, did not get suspended, but I mean, that hit crazy. By Draisaitl was a suspendable hit. He jumped. And Barkov, if Barkov's off
today.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If Barkov's out, things are different.
Oh, big time. Yeah, but he's a full participant in practice today.
Oh, okay. So
it sounds like he's going to be back in, and that guy is going to come back with a vengeance. He might have 3 points in the first period.
There is probably not a better player in the league that people don't know his name. Because he's a Selke type of guy. Gretzky's right. He's Trottier. He's Trottier or a modern day now, if more up to date, Bergeron.
Yeah, I have to find it for you, but there's the man on the street type thing. They're like, "What do you think of Sasha Barkov?" And they're like, "Who? What do you mean Sasha? Who's Sasha?"
Yep.
Alexander Barkov. Your star player.
He is phenomenal, though. He is phenomenal. And this Florida team actually reminds me of the Islander team that beat the Oilers for the Cup. When the Islanders won 4 consecutive, they beat Philadelphia, Minnesota, Vancouver, and then the Oilers. That Islanders team reminds me of these Panthers. They're just good goaltending to great goaltending, and they are just so damn tough. They will kick your ass from here to Saturday. All right, sir. We're done. He's AJ. I'm Judd. Hopefully next time we talk to you on JHS, Jesse Pierce will be along as well. See you later.